This episode of Built Different is brought to you by Spas and More. Visit spasandmorestl.com for more information.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Built Different podcast. In studio with me, I have Chip Ashford, a firefighter with St. Charles City.
Yep.
So we're just going to kind of talk about his career and his life. So, Chip, starting off, I guess, so let's just kind of walk through the early phases of your career.
Yeah. So, my dad was a fireman for 25 years, so I kind of grew up around it, or really grew up in a firehouse most of my life.
Right.
He was a captain right outside of Granite City, actually the old Army depot that was there in Granite City.
Okay.
So, and he was a volunteer. He started as a paramedic back in the 80s. And so grew up around it a lot and got into it and started volunteering when I was 17 over in Illinois, and graduated high school, got my EMT license at 18, started working at East St. Louis on the ambulance. Spent a couple of years down there getting my paramedic license and all that stuff out of the way, and had a good time down there. And then migrated to St. Louis City, wanted to work for a big city and do all that stuff. And went there in, I guess, 98. Spent about 10 years there, a couple of years on the ambulance, and then actually a month after 9/11, went to the academy. Went over to the suppression side and worked 8 years at 26s up north. And at some point, having 4 kids and trying to build a better life for them and stuff, I migrated out to St. Charles City. I had an opportunity to go out there. I had a lot of friends out there. There's probably, 15, 16 of us from St. Louis City that work there. So
right.
It's kind of St. Louis City West.
Mm-hmm.
And been there 18 years, got promoted 12 years ago to captain. Been a supervisor for that time. And the other part of it too, probably 24 years ago now, I started as a flight paramedic at Children's Hospital with their program for about 10 years. Then about 14 years ago, got an offer to switch over to survival flight air ambulance, which is helicopter service here locally. Our headquarters in Batesville, Arkansas, but switched over to them about 14 years ago as my day off job. And they've taken really good care of me and helped me support my family the best I can. And so I flew for about 20 years, and probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I got into management with them. And I just do management stuff on my day off now with them, and manage 4 helicopter bases and 2 ground bases, and work at the firehouse 2 or 3 days a week. And,
yep.
Yeah. So
awesome. Sounds like you're a busy man.
Yes. Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the flight side of things. I know that's kind of your day off job, so yeah. you don't do it probably as much as your regular.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's pretty much both of them are full time.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate there. They trust me to do what I need to do and handle my business on my days off. There is a balance there, trying to, prioritize each one. The flight side's great. It did start as something I just wanted to do, and it was better than working on an ambulance or doing the same thing at the fire. It was a different kind of outlet than just being at the firehouse is the same thing. So, and getting into critical care and some of the advanced certification stuff. And, yeah, so it's been really good. It's been fun. I've gotten to do a lot of really cool stuff with them. And
what's kind of like a regular shift look like
on the flight side? Yeah, so for all the nurses and medics that come in, it's kind of like the firehouse in the sense you come in, check your stuff, get settled for the day, do a pass off from what's happened on the day before, checking all the equipment, going. What's different there compared to like an ambulance or something is the aviation side, making sure the aircraft's good, understanding the aviation part of it. The pilots work 12-hour shifts because of FAA regulations. And so twice a day you have a safety debriefing with them. And so that's really kind of the big difference, is like sitting down with them and understanding weather and patient loads and, weight restrictions and understanding all that stuff for the day. And obviously trying to be really safe at what we're doing.
Right.
It is a safe process, but there's a lot of things we can get ourselves caught up in.
Absolutely.
If you're not, especially with weather and obstacles and flying at night and, flying into some of these scenes where you're laying in the middle of a highway at 2:00 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding MVGs and dealing with all that stuff. So, but yeah, you kind of get all that stuff out of the way for the day, and then you're just kind of there hanging out until something happens. And we're very fortunate. The base we had up there, like, we had a good base with the people were good. We eat together. We had a gym close. You can work out every day. And so yeah, and then depending on the day, it could be no flights.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of hanging out and watching Netflix and doing whatever. Probably my busiest day there was like 6 flights, and we flew like 18 of the 24 hours. So
yeah,
just it's kind of random.
How much room is there in the helicopter? Like, I didn't know. So that's kind of my experience. So I had my leg thing go on not too long ago, and they actually, from my hometown, they flew me into Barnes, and I was pretty doped up for the entire ride, but I just remember like squeezing in and like, hey, it was pretty tight.
Yeah, for sure, and especially at at my flight weight, 6'2" and 220, like I'm not the smallest guy to be sitting in that seat, and so and the paramedic sits in the 206 or the 407, whichever one you would have flown in. I'm sitting behind the head of the patient, so the patients get like your head's kind of in between my legs, and it's there. So there's not a lot of moving around, and especially if things go bad, like trying to move around. The nurses have a little more, and usually, I mean, traditionally speaking, especially when we have most of our nurses are females, they're typically smaller, and so they can kind of move around and do what they need to do and
get what they I was very surprised, coming from like a first responder background. I was trying to soak in all the information, especially with this podcast. I was trying to soak in like all the information I could during the flight. Of course, I was extremely high, doped up,
for sure.
But I was trying to. So it definitely intrigues me, get to talk to someone like that. It's a whole different side of the game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get really close to your partner. You have to be okay with each other and who you are, and not be afraid to be in tight quarters.
Right. So, and there's only. Is there 3 of you in the helicopter then?
Yeah, so a pilot and then nurse and medic in the back.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, moving on. Let's kind of start off early in your career. Let's kind of just jump through the hoops. We talked a little bit about the differences, but you said you started volunteer over in Illinois.
Yeah, Long Lake Fire District, which is right outside of Grand City. I kind of grew up in that neighborhood. And then, I started volunteering when I was 17. I mean, again, I'd been around the firehouse hanging out with my dad and doing all that stuff. And my mom was not super excited about the idea. So she was pushing me in a much different direction. Like in high school, I was doing, like computer-aided drafting, and I was going down an engineering route. And, it just wasn't a good fit. Like being around the firehouse, I started volunteering and being around all that stuff and running some calls and being around the guys and just that camaraderie and brotherhood part of it, and seeing how my dad grew up, playing softball with the guys and hanging out and family barbecues and doing all this stuff. And I actually went to college. I went to SIU Edwardsville for a semester, and I was like, I can't do that. Like, it's not for me. So I came home and told my dad, and he's like, I knew you wouldn't, so got my EMT license through them. And I stayed there volunteering for a couple of years while I was working on the ambulance, and it was phenomenal. I mean, they gave me a great opportunity. They helped pay for my medic school. They got me through some of my college classes and paid for that stuff, and took really good care of me in the beginning. And again, growing, like most of those guys had known my dad forever. So it was just being part of the family. And so it was great. And I had some friends that worked in East St. Louis at Simmons Ambulance, which was there back in the day, and kind of started working down there, and was very young and green and didn't really know what I was doing. And was a very big culture shock for an 18-year-old white kid hanging out in East St. Louis, but we had a blast, and I had a bunch of really good people around me. And so it's kind of where it started.
Then you moved to the city.
Yep.
And did you have to go through their fire academy as well?
Yeah. So I started there. I got a job on the EMS. My very first fire department job was down south of Kansas City in Raymore, Missouri, but I was only there for like 8 months. I was just testing everywhere. Back then in the fire service, everyone wanted it. Like, it was pretty competitive. Like,
and this was like what year?
97.
Okay.
So when I tested at St. Louis City, like took the very first fire department test, I think there was 5,000 of us in the convention center for like 100 jobs, right? And so it was super competitive. And so I just tested everywhere. I took this job at South Metro Fire District, went down there and worked for about 8 months. And St. Louis City called for the ambulance side for me, and if you had a city job, you got priority to move over to the fire department.
Right.
So when that was right when the fire department took over the ambulance from health and hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were adding some people. And so I got a chance to come back and be back home and kind of start my career with St. Louis City. So I did about 2.5 years on the ambulance. Worked on Medic 10 up at Kennerly and Whittier, up there in that neighborhood. And had a great time with those guys and got a chance to, when I moved up on the promotion list then for the fire department side. And so got the call finally. Actually, it was one of those weird transitions that I'm sure everybody kind of went through, like 9/11 happened. And I actually was considering going in the Army or the military, something as a paramedic, because I'm like 2 years in North St. Louis, had a ton of experience, and a couple of years in East St. Louis, and I was like, I could probably help. And I was actually standing in the recruiter's office when my wife at the time called and said, "Hey, there's this letter here from St. Louis City from the fire department," and I'm like, "Well, open it." And it was my letter to go to the academy the next month, and I'm like, well, I guess I got to take that. So I didn't want to pass up that opportunity. It's what I really wanted to do. So so October of 2001, we went to the academy, and 14-ish weeks later, we graduated right after like January 2nd, I think, something like that, and hit the street and went from there.
Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, like call volume and stuff at that time in the city.
Yeah. So, you looked at, obviously the city's always been busy, right? And so like working on the ambulance, being on Medic 10, I think we were doing a little over 7,000 runs a year on the ambulance. We were the third busiest ambulance in the country, based on Firehouse magazine puts out these stats every year of busiest companies across the country. And so that was, obviously a lot. And then when I went to the 26s, we were always in the top 10. We did about 3,500 runs a year, average probably about a fire a day. And obviously never come that way. It's 3 here, 0 here, whatever. And it was a busy fire time, those first couple of years. I can remember, kind of like keeping track of our own stuff for a day or for a year when I was new and super excited about it. And I think that year we went to like 320 fires, just us on our shift, so I got a ton of experience and had a great time with those guys, and had a really great group of guys that loved the job and wanted to be there. And I learned a ton from those guys. And
were you running medical calls along with? Yeah.
About 97, when they took over the ambulances, when the fire, the suppression side started running medical calls.
And that house that was at, where was that at?
Taylor and Margaretta.
Okay.
Up there in the 6th district.
So, and you were with the city for how long?
Till 2008. So about 10 years total.
And then after the city, you move out to St. Charles City, where you're at now. Is that correct?
Yep.
Let's kind of talk about the differences between the city and then.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that, when I kind of got into making the move, and, obviously there's some stuff at a personal level of like my kids and trying to provide a better life for them. And, but kind of the straw at that moment was, we lived in kind of off of St. Louis Hills, off of Wabash there. And there was a police chase and shootout that happened. There was a string of car break-ins and stuff. And back, I don't know if they still have it, but that crime suppression unit they had back in the day, one of the lieutenants was on his way home from that and pulled up on these guys breaking into cars, and they got a shootout on the back of the house, and this car chase happened right up my street. And that was kind of the moment, like, okay, like, I love the city. I love living here, but like my kids are upstairs in bed. Like I got to do something. And so I had an opportunity to go out there, through, some stuff. I had tested there about 4 times. I actually, after that happened, I knew I kind of needed to go, and I got picked up by a department over in Illinois again, for about 6 or 8 months.
Mhm.
And that just kind of got me out of the city. And that was when I went to Collinsville, Illinois, and the guys there are amazing, but it was a huge culture shock. Like going from North St. Louis to a small, short staffed apartment over there, running both, like jumping back and forth from fire trucks and ambulances and all this stuff. That was a big culture shock, and I struggled with that a lot. And that was one of the things I was really worried about leaving the city. Was I wanted something that seemed close to being the same, that I could be happy at, and and that unfortunately was not. And the guys were absolutely amazing, but it just culturally was not for me.
Right.
And so after testing at St. Charles City like 4 times, because again, it was super competitive. I mean, I was taking those tests with 200 people for like 1 or 2 jobs. My number finally kind of came up, and I got the phone call, and so I jumped on it, and it was great going out there. I mean, culturally, it's very much the same. A lot of that comes from having so many guys from St. Louis City out there. But it's you basically take a smaller version of St. Louis and plug it on the Missouri River, and it's an old river town with a bunch of old buildings, and it's a lot of the same stuff. So obviously that's been growing like crazy out there, and we're getting busier and busier all the time. And like my son's coming up now and graduated the fire academy and got his EMT license. He's 18 and coming into it. And I try to impart it, whether I teach at the academy, which I do on a regular basis, or talking to him, is like, I wanted to I didn't want to go somewhere that I was bored and hung out in my room and played played, Xbox and whatever. And St. Charles City was that place that I know when I walk away here in 4 years and a couple of months, that I did some cool stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I still had a great career. I had a lot of fun. We went to some fires. We've just had a really good time, and we've built a really great culture out there since I've been there, and done some really great things operationally. And when you look at departments around the area, it's been about, the last one happened about 6 or 8 months ago, but in a 24-month period, we pulled 19 people out of building fires successfully, and rescue. And there's not a lot of other than St. Louis City, like there's just not a lot of places around here that happens. Right. And so that's what I wanted, though, right? I wanted to be able to still get the same feel of St. Louis City, but be able to take better care of my family. And so St. Charles has been that, and we've got a great group of guys that have been really good to me. And
you've been with St. Charles for how long?
18 years.
18 years. You mentioned kind of teaching in the academy. Is that does St. Charles have their own academy?
So St. Charles County has their own academy, but then St. Louis County has an academy too. Okay. If you want to work in St. Louis County, you have to go through St. Louis County's academy. Okay. Kind of like St. Louis City.
Right.
A few years ago, I got an opportunity to teach at St. Louis County. I got picked up and hired there. And so, yeah, it's been fun. It's just good to like share experiences and talk and go and get back. And now, like I do a class now with Chief Casey out of New Melly. He used to work for us at St. Charles. He's the fire chief at New Melly now. And we had a near miss back in 2014 that we almost killed 4 of our guys. And so we built a class around that. We've been traveling and doing that for a while. And it's part of the academy curriculum now. And so it's basically there to show them what this job is really about. It's scary and dangerous, and we do it about the last week or so before they get out of the recruit class. And we kind of built on that, and we talk about firehouse culture and all that stuff. So it's been fun to be able to like catch these kids coming out in their last week or so, and really like hopefully impart some stuff on them about what the fire service really is, and the brotherhood part of it, and what it can do for you, and all that stuff, and get them off on the right foot before they get out. So,
how many stations do you guys have around St. Charles?
6.
Okay.
So we actually, obviously it's been in the paper. We are the only department in St. Charles County that has our own ambulances.
Okay.
St. Charles County Ambulance District runs the rest of the county. We're actually transitioning out of the ambulance business because our Station 6 currently is a temporary station with just an ambulance in it. And there's a huge pocket that we have a response problem out there for the fire side. And so we're transitioning, actually September 30th, 2 of our ambulances are shut down. We're going to take those people and put them on a fire truck out there. Okay. So working with the city, and they've been really good to us of understanding where we're short and what we need to do. And because we have the ability that St. Charles County Ambulance District can run it and take it over, we can transition into putting more fire apparatus on the street. And so So that 6th house will be up and running with a fire truck in it at least by, September 30th. So
it's definitely growing then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're up over 100,000 people now. When I started there, I think we were at like 65 and now we're up over 100.
Is there more stations since you started? And obviously.
Yeah. Station 6. When I started there, it was just 5.
Okay.
And so we've added this 6th one.
And probably manpower too.
Yeah. We've added about 8 people. Like we have a fire marshal, a fire marshal division now that we didn't have before. We added an EMS chief. We've added that 6th station, which we had to add a few people because of that. Obviously depending on as growth and things happen, they're already like looking at Station 7 down the road and some of those things as Newtown and that whole area up north grows.
You kind of hit on this a little bit earlier. I like to ask this question to all my guests. So, would you recommend this job to a family member or a friend? So obviously you kind of mentioned that your son was going into it. So let's kind of talk about, so you said he's going into the EMS side. Is that what you said?
So he got his EMT license and he graduated. Southwest Illinois College has their own fire academy over there. So he graduated that a few months ago. He's working part-time in O'Fallon, Illinois on the fire department. And he's working part-time at Washington County EMS right now. He's 18. So in Illinois, you can't be a full-time firefighter until you're 21 because of your pension system and whatever. So he's getting ready to figure out medic school and what he's going to do. He's still got to make a plan for his long-term, right? But he's still young and new into it. But yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, that's actually one of those things we've been talking a lot about recently from a cultural side. So my battalion chief, Aaron Burlingame, I currently have, we've been doing a fire service culture class for about 2 years now. He had to write a paper for his degree, and he wrote it on the death of the fire service, how we're losing the fire service culture. And when we dove into it, we were kind of went down a path of like this younger generation's ruining it and, all this stuff. And as we dove into it, we realized like, maybe it's not them, maybe it's us, right? And we're not teaching them the right way and we're not bringing them up the right way. And we're not being as understanding as we can be. We just expect them to do things the same way we did. And it's just different. Right. And so that's been going really good. But one of the things we talk about in class, from a recruitment retention standpoint is like, what are we doing to ruin these kids before they even come in? Or are we recruiting our family members? Like, this job has given me a lot and a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things, between the flight side and the fire service and like, teaching this near miss class that we've been doing. Like I've gotten to travel all over the country, conferences and meet guys from all over the world and be around people like that. And if it wasn't for the fire service, I wouldn't have that. Right. And so I've literally, unfortunately, I've seen guys out there like telling their own kids, like, this job sucks, don't do it, whatever. And if we're turning our own family members away, like, no wonder we can't find anybody, right? Yeah. And so obviously there's parts that I worry for them, just because it is different and it's not the same as it was 20, 25 years ago, but it's still been a great career. If you get in with the right people, I mean, that's the biggest thing I push on them is like, before you take a job somewhere now, because there are so many opportunities, go do a ride along, go hang out with those guys, go sit at the kitchen table, like make sure culturally it fits for you before you just jump into something. And so, yeah, I mean, and same way too. I mean, my oldest daughter's finishing nursing school. She's already got a job at SLU at St. Louis University Hospital as a nurse graduate. She graduates next month. And then my second daughter, Madison, is graduating next month too with a criminal justice and psychology degree. And so now she's going down the law enforcement route. And, some people ask me that too. And I'm like, man, it's still been a good job. I mean, I know it's tough and it's hard out there and whatever, but there's been a lot of good opportunities for a lot of people in the law enforcement world, especially like she's considering going federal and doing some other things. So like it could be really good for her. So,
I guess, what are some of the things that you've seen change with your time? Obviously you said you were in the late 90s,
right?
To now. I know you've kind of mentioned cultural differences and stuff now, but I'm sure there's more than just that.
I think culture, like with the guys, the biggest change is like, and we talk about this all the time, is when I came into the fire service, it was all guys who were ex-military or like trades guys, right? So they were carpenters or electricians or HVAC guys, whatever. And they were like, oh, well, I kind of like this fireman thing. I can do that, and I can still do the carpentry stuff on the side, and whatever. And so they all were very mechanically inclined. There wasn't a lot of degrees and college, stuff, and it was all about just building construction and knowing your job and doing all this stuff. And so now, because things have just changed, and we've pushed that generation to go to college, and that was the big thing, right? And so now these guys are going straight into college, they're going to EMT and paramedic and straight into the fire academy, whatever it is, and they're coming out straight from school with no experience, with no trades experience, with no mechanical experience. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Is that's where we had to understand, like, shit, we have to teach them everything, right? You know what I mean? They don't know what a saw is. They don't know how to change a blade on a saw. They don't know how to start a saw. They don't know, and when I came into it, we didn't have to do that, right? I mean, most guys knew what they were doing. We are still getting a lot of military guys. Like, we got a new guy starting in 2 weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks. He was an infantry officer with a degree from WashU, super smart guy. So he'll have a lot of really good experience, after he did a couple of deployments. And but it's just, that's the cultural difference. Like, I mean, we kind of joke about it. It's funny to a point, but like, I didn't think I'd have to teach a kid how to do laundry.
Right.
Like, that's what's happening now. Some of these guys are coming straight from home. They've never lived out on their own, or they still live with their parents. Whatever. They don't know how to cook. They don't know how to clean. They don't, and so we're really teaching them everything. And the first couple of times it happened to me, it was like, I got, you get mad or you're frustrated. And then I had to like really think about it. And like, this is where like, maybe it's my problem, not theirs. Right.
Yeah.
So that's been a big part of it. The job wise, I mean, obviously we don't go to as many fires as we used to. So that has sort of declined. We're going, medical calls go up, fires go down a little bit. Even in busier areas, like, we go to more car accidents and some of those things, which is understandable. The part that I try to impart to everybody and get them to understand, though, is that the way the dynamics of modern fire happens now, everything happens so fast now because of products of combustion and the things that are burning, right? 30 years ago, it was wood and wool, and now it's all plastics and petroleum-based products, and so it burns way faster, right? And so fires are going down, but we're finding more people in buildings because they don't have time to get out of the building. And so nationwide, we're making way more rescues across the country than we ever have before, even though the numbers of fires are going down. And so that's been a big change of like really like hammering in these guys. Like, this is why it's so important to get in the building, do what we need to do, and really shifting that culture to that.
So I'm guessing that kind of changes your on the scene command and like what you guys do when you first show up versus 20 years ago when you first show up on a scene. You guys probably
tactics
do things
are way different, and we've had to evolve, and that's been hard, right, over the years. 30 years ago, you could pull up and take a bunch of windows and ventilate it really easily and do some of these things, and now it's like not ventilating it, keeping it more contained until you can get water on the fire. We just had to shift stuff, and the good thing is, and this is a big part, the good part of like social media and data collection and all the stuff that's happened over the last 30 years is that we can share all of that data now and get it all out there. 30 years ago, we didn't have people collecting data and doing some of that stuff. And that's been a big positive change, is that all that data is out there. We can really deep dive into. Brian Brush out of Texas or Oklahoma, I think, is doing it's called firefighterrescuesurvey.com, and people, every time there's a rescue across the country, they send him data, and it's this, checklist of like, where did you find him? What time of day? All this stuff. And then he's got, compiled like 4,000 rescues over the last couple of years that he can put all that data out now. Like 80% of the time they're found on the floor, 75% of the time they're close to an exit, this many times we found them in a bedroom. 60% of the time, if we found one, we found two, and so now we can teach all these guys based on this data and really change their mindset versus we just went off of like, oh, well, this is what happens. So, so it's just putting the experience with the data collection and all that stuff. Now we're just way smarter.
Right. Which obviously makes you guys more efficient and that on-scene stuff too, I'm sure. Do you see like more like spreading of the fire, or are things more are they harder to contain, I guess is what I'm trying to ask, and then than they were back then, or?
Yeah, for sure. Cause everything burns so much faster now. So like, and I might mess these numbers up, but from grow stage to flashover stage 30 years ago might take 7 to 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's happening in a minute to a minute and a half.
Right.
Right. And so these rooms are flashing, the buildings are taking off. We get a lot more, you see it a lot more too, where it's like, it might be a one room fire in the building, but based on building construction and it's a vinyl sided house. Well, 30 years ago, when it was a brick house, right? One room was just showing from a window and that's all it was.
Right.
Well, now it's showing from that window and it's running up the entire back of the house and getting into the attic space and everything else because all that siding's burning off,
Right.
So it's just kind of changed how you have to look at things. And but it's been good. I mean, guys are paying attention. That's a good part.
Last question. I like to ask this with all my guests, but if you had one piece of advice that you give a young firefighter coming out of the academy, what would it be?
I mean, be a student in the game, right? Like if you're going to be into the job, be into the job all the time.
Right.
One of the things we try really hard to impart on the guys is how dangerous this job can be. And it's easy to, and I'm sure on the police side too, right? It's easy to get lulled into this complacent, like nothing happens, nothing bad happens, nothing bad happens until the bad thing happens. Right. And it's just trying to, be a student of the game, be really good, master your craft, be proud of what you're doing. And get really good at all those perishable skills. Cause I'm sure like you guys like qualifying for shooting, right? If you don't shoot on a regular basis and get really good at that slowly goes away. Right. And we're the same way, like forcing doors, throwing ladders, pulling lines, masking up, all those stuff are perishable skills that if you don't do it for 6 months, you're not going to be as proficient as what you were when you're doing it every day.
Right.
And so that's where you really have to hone your craft and get out and practice and do all those things. And just be proud of what you're doing and take, put a bunch of work into it and keep yourself safe. Cause that's one of the things, like the cliche they always say is the best thing an old firefighter can teach a new firefighter is how to be an old firefighter.
Right.
Right. And not get yourself killed in the process. And, cause it will happen. I mean, even we're considered a small department at 5 engine houses. Right. And like I said, in 2014, almost killing 4 of those guys, like, that was a big wake-up call to the whole, not just the whole department, the whole county. We've changed a lot of things countywide because of that, because it was like, holy shit, this happened to us too. It's not Chicago, New York, LA, like it can happen right here. So we were very fortunate, knock on wood, that nobody died out of it. But it was a big like wake-up call.
Yeah, eye-opener. Well, thanks for coming on, Chip.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
What if you could start your day feeling loose, relaxed, and ready? Deep hydrotherapy right in your backyard. No commute, no appointments, just warmth, relief whenever you need it. Sore muscles recover faster, tight joints loosen up, tension you carry all day, gone. Relax with your family or friends, or work out with our Michael Phelps Edition Swim Spas. Worried about maintenance? We have factory-trained service nearby whenever you need it. Plus, we're here for you long-term if you have any questions or need to refill supplies. You can even test spas at our showrooms. Spas and More, A+ rated, locally owned for 20 years. We put the in spa.